In this example video, which I'm delighted to share with you from one of our schools that we've been working with for the last 3 years, who have been running the Wellbeing Ambassadors program, our online Train the Trainer toolkit in how to lead peer-to-peer support interventions based on positive psychology and coaching psychology. I talked to Lee from King's Chester. He's the Deputy Head of Sixth Form and in charge of the Wellbeing Ambassadors project. And we talk about why he decided to prioritise early intervention and prevention in his school, how he chose our programme and why it's important to him that it's evidence-based, what the ambassadors have been doing around transforming school mental health and wellbeing, and the types of interventions and types of initiatives that they've been involved with, which include peer mentoring, but only a little bit, which is interesting if you're interested in peer-to-peer interventions using mentoring style approaches, how they are involved in challenging and addressing stigma, how they're raising a culture of self-help strategies and coping, and how the young people themselves develop their own wellbeing curriculum and created their own programme near exams to help prevent exam stress and share coping strategies. How they are now working with supporting staff and HR in helping staff wellbeing, which I just think is phenomenal and amazing, and how that the school now see the Wellbeing Ambassadors as an integral part of their whole school approach to mental health and wellbeing. They've been awarded gold for the Carnegie Mental Health Award. They are the highest achieving independent school in the North West, I want to say. And have been awarded that as well. So it's really working for them in their school. As Lee says, he sees the ambassadors and the work they do around strategic school early intervention and prevention as the first line of defence in school mental health and wellbeing. So I hope you really enjoy this video. I'm really excited to share it with you. The first thing I like to start with is tell me a little bit about your school.
Okay, so we're a co-educational private day school based in Chester. We have on site, we've got infant school, we've got a junior school and a senior school. About 100-ish per year group, it varies, but about those sort of numbers. We're kind of a top performing academic school, and in the last sort of 6 or 7 years since we've been taken over by a different headmaster, we've grown quite a lot pastorally, and then obviously we're sort of moving forward as much as we possibly can in terms of children's mental health. So much so that we've just been awarded a Carnegie School Mental Health Award, the gold level of that. And I think in no small part, I think mental fitness ambassadors or wellbeing ambassadors have been a big part.
Just to catch people up that are watching, your school's is now entering the 4th year of doing the Wellbeing Ambassadors program. So when you buy the Wellbeing Ambassadors program, you sign up for 3 years. So you've done 3 years, and the program's evolved over that time. What rewind back to prior to starting those 3 years? Where was the school with mental health before you started? What made you choose to do that program?
Yeah, so I mean, we've obviously always had kind of pastoral, kind of like the heart of what we do, but I'd say that we noticed it's definitely sort of coming out of COVID. We noticed that our numbers of people sort of accessing the counsellor that we had at school were a lot higher than they had been before. They were almost double in terms of what we'd seen previously, and what we were looking at doing is changing kind of our intervention process, our tiers. Of kind of what we had, and what we were finding is a lot of pupils were going directly to the counsellor and sort of circumnavigating anything else. We basically wanted to bring a program in whereby we could be more preventative than reactive, which is where this sort of I suppose this kind of idea sort of came from. And then obviously it was kind of finding out kind of a little bit about doing some research myself, and finding the search framework, which I think we'll probably talk about in a bit. But then finding that your program obviously sort of built upon that, and we've changed our tiered intervention on the back of introducing the Wellbeing Ambassadors. We call them mental fitness ambassadors. But yeah, we were kind of there. So what we were finding is we had staff members as heads of houses, because we have a house system, so they're kind of like pastoral leads, and we were finding that pupils were either seeing them or seeing the counsellor. There wasn't much preventative, and we were finding as a school what we were doing is we were highlighting mental health issues that people might face, rather than thinking about what they could do to prevent those actually becoming an issue in the first place. What we let pupils do is kind of self-refer to the counsellor. There's a button that they can press if they want access to support, but what we wanted to do is introduce levels below that, and then in front of all of that is that preventative thing.
It's kind of I suppose 3 years ago it was kind of quite was it a bit of a radical idea, or like what
I didn't know anyone else, any other schools locally that were using your program. I think there was some other people that were using sort of similar things, but the way we kind of arrived at it is I was working in pastoral at the time, and I've since gone on to work now in sixth form with a kind of a pastoral and academic element to it, but still kind of hold the kind of reins on kind of this program. And it was because I did a bit of independent research in terms of like, what is the best practice for preventative mechanisms with pupils? And I stumbled upon the meta-analysis, which is the search framework. Forgive me, I completely forgot the authors. I'm sure you can. Okay. Yeah, so I stumbled across that, and I had a read of that, and I read kind of like the synopsis of that, and I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And there was a lot of people sort of talking about that study. I was like, oh, I think there's something to this. And then I stumbled across Worth It, and I was like, oh, these guys are actually using that search framework already. So it was really key to us doing a program that it was evidence-based. So using that search framework as part of what you did kind of really fit with what we wanted to do and what we wanted to achieve. And it just kind of aligned exactly what we wanted to do and kind of where we were at that point. The thing is, when you sort of present this sort of thing to governors is they're always interested in data for it. And they're like, well, can we measure the impact of this? And obviously measuring impact of kind of supporting this nature is so difficult. So just like one of the things they talk about is kind of like, well, are our numbers of people accessing the council falling? And at first, actually, our numbers rose for a little while. And that's because I think we're removing a bit of stigma and kind of allowing people to sort of think about things a bit more and being a bit more open with accessing support, which I actually view as a positive. But it depends on how you look at those numbers, doesn't it? So if you think the numbers are climbing, well is this having a negative impact? Well, I would probably argue no. So I think some of the barriers and the concerns were kind of funding. Would it be a success? And then how do we measure it? They were kind of the three areas and barriers. And I think the money has been absolutely justified. I think when we talk about some of the things that the program are doing at the minute in school and the impacts it's having, I think people can see you can see it's having impact, but you can't necessarily measure it's having impact. And that's difficult to present to externals like governors who aren't in the school permanently. I think the barriers have kind of been jumped now. And I think we're in a position where we probably we would always use it, I think.
Yeah. That's amazing. And that's the thing with early intervention. That's the thing with well-being initiatives, is it's often intangible change, but you can see the students are smiling more. They have a happier demeanour. There's less issues. There's less knocking on pastoral's door all the time. And that is hard to measure, but it's like if it wasn't there. And you can't, it's not ethical often to measure it, because it's like, then what do you do with the young people that don't access?
Yeah, we can't really have a study where we don't offer it to some people and do offer it to others as a kind of for that year. We have a kind of in September we recruit, and then we have like a day workshop whereby I train them based upon the facilitators manual, and we then sort of spend half of that day building what our developmental plan will look like. What are we trying to achieve here? What are we trying to do, and how are we going to do it? And then they go off and lead those little projects. And we will have weekly meetings together as a mental fitness ambassador, or fortnightly meetings, because I meet our leads of MFA once a week. And then the next week, what we'll do is we'll have a group meeting. And they like provide status reports of where they're up to and what they're doing. They literally go and lead it all independently. So for example, one of them, they've just done like a social media takeover in the last few days. Whereby, well, it was last week actually, where they were talking about kind of what people should be doing to protect their mental health around examinations. And part of that was one of the groups have come up with anxiety of pupils pre-examination, just in the like 20 minutes before they go in. And you can see those groups of kids and they're all sort of together and they're all sort of huddling and they're all sort of hyping each other up before they go into the exam, and how we could sort of calm that. So we've got one of our teachers as a yoga instructor. I asked her to make a 10-minute sort of breathwork video. So they've kind of put together this breathwork workshop whereby pupils, before they go into examinations, can go into there. So that was one of the things that went into the social media takeover. So like little projects like that they just go and do, and then they come back to me and go, "Oh, I finished it. I've done it." And I'm like, "Brilliant!" And they literally just lead different things at different points. Yeah, and I think one of the things I thought it was going to be when we brought it in is I thought one of their major roles, even though it kind of says not this in your paperwork, I thought one of their major roles would be that they might be a person that other pupils would come and speak to. Mm-hmm. So what we did at the beginning is we set up a button on our kind of VLE whereby pupils can press it, like they can press and self-refer for a counsellor, they could press and self-refer for an MFA. So they would press the button and it would say, kind of, who are you? What's up? How serious is it? And who would you like to speak to? Would you like a Zoom call with an MFA? Would you like to chat to them? Would you like an email conversation? Do you want to speak to a trained mental health first aider who's a teacher? Do you have anyone in particular you'd want to talk to? All of those different options. And I kind of thought that would be their main role at first.
Yeah.
And that we still have that as in position. That's still one of the things that we do. But I would say that is probably 5% of their role. Most of their role is around all of the preventative mechanisms. Even though they're in our tiered intervention system, the preventative stuff comes first. Then they are there as an MFA button, and then we have like pastoral leaders, and then we have we've got a mental health wellbeing nurse in school now, and then we've got access to counsellor and then access to external agencies. But I thought that they were going to be that first line of defence, not being as preventative, but being kind of someone that people come and speak to about fairly minor things. We gave them really clear guidance about it. Like if someone divulges to you that they're contemplating suicide, that's not for you to deal with. If someone comes to you and says, I've fallen out with a few of my mates and I'm feeling a bit flat, that's something you can absolutely have a conversation around. And then what we did as well is we paired those up with teachers. So if at any point they were having a conversation with the pupil, they'd have to liaise with the teacher about what the content of that conversation was, just so we can make sure we're keeping them safe and the people that who've invested in them safe.
Bullet points like confidence and friendships, or basic overview of the
exactly, things like fairly low-key things, but things that absolutely peers can support with. And that system still works. I'd say it's mainly invested by sort of year 7 and year 8 pupils, who then speak to the upper 6, but it's nowhere near what I thought it would be in terms of the volume of numbers.
So what is the preventative stuff? Is it sharing coping strategies? Tell me more.
Yeah, so it's a variety of things. So this week we don't generally do the kind of the week theme thing. We kind of try and drip feed it all the way through. But we happen to have done it this week because I quite like the theme of this one. So the Mental Health Foundation this week are doing Move More for Mental Health. So we're wearing green today. That's one of the things.
The day we're filming this.
Yeah, it so happened to be. That was actually unplanned as well.
Yeah.
Like some of the things that we've been pushing kind of is extracurricular, and we're trying to make sure that every person in the school does 2 extracurricular things, so that can be academic, it can be sporting, and ideally one of each. But then doing other things, so they've got kind of outlets, really important. What we used to find sometimes is around exam year groups, year 11, year 13 in particular, might sort of pull back on those a little bit as they concentrate on exams, and we're like, that's the absolute opposite of what we want. You need to keep doing those so you've got this outlet. So kind of pushing those kind of things would be an example, I suppose. Yeah.
Like coping strategies to deal with exam stress, maintaining
balance. So one of the things we brought in last year was coping strategy. So I talked about the breath workshop already. So that's a new thing that we brought in this year, and that came about because we surveyed the year 11s and asked them, would you use this? And 40% of them said they would. So that we've only just started doing that on Monday of this week. Posted stuff and spoken to pupils, but we're launching that out to parents and stuff, so they're aware as well, and they can say, well, that's quite a good idea. Last year we brought in what we called the Working Well sessions. So we targeted pupils who we knew were sort of struggling with exam anxiety. Like we're an academically selective school, so there kind of is intrinsic pressure from the pupils themselves to do well. And I think we do quite well in terms of managing the extrinsic pressure. But I think sometimes some pupils they do get concerned and worried about it. So we brought these sessions in, and it was basically 5 different sessions about coping mechanisms. So like not catastrophizing, for example, talking about kind of like the stress container and how stress containers get full and overflow, and making sure that we've got outlets and all those sorts of healthy coping mechanisms around it. And we did sort of 5 different sessions over 5 different weeks with year 11 and year 13 pupils to try and help them cope as best they possibly could. And we did that in the build up to just in the build up to Easter, and then just after Easter as well, so about 5 weeks. And that was a program that the MFAs sort of built. Like, they built the sessions. We sort of came together and decided, what do we think are the 5 things we should include? And they built the sessions.
Content they put
so some of the content is definitely lifted from you. We lifted some of the content from Mental Health First Aid England, from a few different places, and it's all sort of evidence based. But then sort of like deciding what we were going to do with it.
Students designing their own wellbeing curriculum is basically what you're talking about.
I mean, that's what they did.
That's amazing.
And then we trained the MFAs to then deliver those sessions. So I didn't deliver any of them. They delivered all of them.
I just imagine like that. Just the benefit of, well, firstly for the MFA to like get the skills to facilitate a workshop, but peers in that are going to respond much better to that young person than they are a teacher.
Definitely. And I think because a lot of it was kind of there was an element of open conversation within it. Like I said, I didn't go to them, but like the reports that came back to me, there was an element of reflection for each of the pupils that were in that session, and they developed kind of like, obviously, sort of a PowerPoint up on the screen to sort of explain different things, but then there was a worksheet that went with it where pupils could reflect personally on it, and some of the pupils kind of would speak openly about it. And I think kind of other people who are feeling that anxiety, seeing that there are other people around that are also feeling like that, and normalizing that is pretty powerful as well. And then the MFAs being there to go, we went through it, it's not fun, but you'll get through it, it'll be okay, rather than me saying it, because I'm 40 and they're a lot closer in terms of age. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I love that. I just think that's so powerful. Those open conversations about stress and coping and well-being improve them. So they must learn that, like, I can give this back to other students in school by running these sessions.
I think the ambassadors they get a kind of sense of self-worth from doing it. I think they feel like they're making a difference, which I think is a big reason that we are oversubscribed for it every year when we advertise it. I sort of say that we want to keep it to kind of about 10 or 12 per year group maximal, but there's always more applicants than that, and I always have to go and say to people, look, I'm sorry, I haven't quite made the cut this time.
Put it on there like UCAS applications and all.
I mean, a lot of them do talk about it in the UCAS application. So we have 2 people who would prefect lead it. So they lead the fortnightly meetings. So that they come up with the agenda. They do the status reports with people. They delegate activities to different people, and they will like, this is your deadline, you haven't met it, and they'll go and have tough conversations with people about it. That's been, it's kind of like what you're doing, what a leader in a school would do, for example, or a leader in a business might do. They genuinely come up with really good ideas, and most of them are within the realms of possibility. Some of them just need a bit of thought. One of the things they set up is because when they were in the junior school, some of the girls that were in junior school they called it a juice club. And it's basically when they went and had a chat, basically, and had a carton of juice and a biscuit. And they've brought that into now year 7, and the MFAs run it, and they talk to the girls about kind of life and periods and kind of like relationships and all the kind of things that go with sort of becoming a teenager. And it was so successful in the first year that they ran it, that they've like rolled that out to the year 8 girls as well now. And we're thinking about putting a year 7 boys one in, and kind of having those sorts of things. But that's like one thing that came like completely from them, that they sort of suggested they did. So
talk to me in general. So you've got your small group of cohorts that are doing what one-to-ones when they're requested, usually year 7 or year 8, that a bit
normally
stuff and struggling with transition.
Friendship, a lot of friendship things,
issue.
Or like, I don't know, got in trouble at home and are kind of worried about consequences or anything like that. Those are the main sort of things.
And then you've got your pop-up juice club for girls, of younger ones who want that older role. It sounds like that older, wiser role. So I just love that. And then you've got your campaigning and your anti-stigma and your peer sharing of self-help strategies for.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the lion's share of what they do.
Yeah.
I think they do a lot of that, and we do a lot of that via, like I said, they started pushing it in social media. They do posters, they go into form times at different points, they survey pupils and ask them kind of what they think about different things. So a lot of what we do is around that. We had the search framework as our pillars, but then we added PR at the bottom of it. And I think the PR on our developmental plan is probably one of the biggest areas, really.
Like the marketing of it.
Marketing, yeah, public relations, that kind of element of things, I suppose. Like we think about it from that perspective, because one of the things this new cohort that are coming through now, because the F6 have left, they've kind of taken over. They, like I said, they brought the branding in line kind of thing, and they want to produce kind of a modern newsletter whereby we have our little character's called Monty. They want to put in a what would Monty do section, kind of like an agony aunt section almost, yeah. But what we didn't want to do is kind of have anonymous letters coming in from pupils that we would then be safeguarding concerns. So we're thinking about sort of generating some from within our own experiences, and then running like a little what would Monty do workshop in the art gallery that we've got on the way down to lunch, kind of having MFAs in there and sort of proposing like, this is a scenario, what would you do if you were in this scenario, just pushing that to people. And then if people come and partake, then they're going to get themselves a little Monty badge, which year 7 and year 8 are go crazy for.
Yeah, the strategic approach that you're taking and that you're action planning from that day one, because the training day is meant to end on an action plan where we're like, right, these are all the things you've learned today, what are you going to take forward? What
will you do now, kind of thing. I think that's a really important element of it. We also towards the end of the year try and survey pupils, like obviously not 5th and F6 because they've left, but we will survey the rest of the school and ask them kind of like what things we've done and what things have worked and what things haven't and what things would they like. And quite often the school voice is pretty sensible in making suggestions of things that they think we are not yet doing that we could do. And then we bring that forward as part of those developmental afternoons where they sort of strategically plan what things are going to look like.
You've got some really good feedback loops going on there, haven't you, as well?
Yeah, I think so.
You are tracking the impact. You are, because otherwise, like, they wouldn't notice things are different if they couldn't feedback.
No, that is true.
So what's changed as a result then? What do you feel the impact is on the school after these 3 years?
I think it's far more normal for us to talk about mental health. I think that's a big thing. So I talked about the fact that I did my assembly at one point. What was even more powerful than that definitely was a student doing it. So there was a student who was at the time in year 12 who came forward and said, I'd like to do my story. This was a few years after I did mine, and she did hers. And we can't fit all of the pupils in the main hall at once to have a whole school assembly. So we generally have 2 year groups in there maybe at one point, and then everybody else watches it virtually. I think I'll be forgiven for saying sometimes the virtual assemblies aren't always listened to that heavily, but in that instance, when that one was played, the entire school was completely silent. It was like one of the most powerful things I've watched, where she talked about kind of what she went through and what she did and how she recovered. And that was highlighting some of the mental health issues that people have, which is what we were trying to move away from. But it was a really powerful thing that happened, I think.
Yeah, and also with the preventative message, like, don't let yourself get ill like I did, kind of.
Yeah, and so a lot of what we're trying to so I think some of the things that we're doing is like we're tracking now kind of participation in terms of extracurricular and trying to push for pupils to do that as much as possible. That's a big mantra within the school. So I think that's pretty standard now. I think most pupils will do 2 activities or more, and we talk about the importance of that. I honestly think the major thing is that people are more happy to talk about it. The thing that also has changed is we've changed our policy. So our MFAs feature in our tiered intervention policy as part of our safeguarding and mental health and the SEMH that we do. So we, like I said, we put that preventative element in. They can push a button, and then it goes to kind of heads of houses and pastoral leads, and then it goes to our mental health nurse, and then it goes to a counsellor and then external agencies. So they are built into our processes. So I think that's a fairly big shift in terms of how we're operating.
Yeah, you're not seeing it as a bolt-on.
No, it's definitely. I mean, they are. I talk to them about them being our first line of defence, and our first line of defence is prevention. So that's how we focus it.
What about staff? Is the programme having an impact on like staff workload or staff wellbeing or anything like that?
So this is something this is fairly recent actually. So that since the new cohort come through, that they've sort of wanted to do more things with staff. So we got a RAC group that are part of the MFAs. So I used to run roundabouts of kindness, and so we used to just sort of be quite underground and like do little things in secret. And we kind of brought this in to be part of MFA now. And they did something recently which was called, what did they call it? They called it Posty Pals. This was their idea, not mine. And the idea being that they went round forms and they gave people little Post-it notes and said, write a nice message to a teacher that you'd like to. And they wrote little nice messages, and then we put them in these boxes, and then the MFAs went and distributed them to staff, which I just thought was really lovely. But one of the things that they're quite keen to do is make sure that we're pushing things towards staff as well. So we're currently working on kind of like going home checklist. And it's kind of like offload to someone if you need to. Think about the things that have gone well today. Try and write off the thing that didn't. And then when you get home, switch off, relax, those kind of things. I think I'm rewriting that at the minute. So I'm writing my own version. There's another teacher writing her own version. There's two MFAs writing their versions. And then we're bringing those together, and we're going to get together with HR to kind of look at how we might implement it. But the idea at the minute that's coming from MFAs and from HR is that we might have kind of like at peak stress points in the year for teachers, for example. We're going to do this for all staff, like for catering, for grounds, for everybody. But like whereby there might be an awful lot of reporting or exam marking or something like that coming up, that when you sign up your computer at the end of the day, it flashes up with one of those points just to make you think before you go home.
I like the idea that the ambassadors are looking after the staff. That's the sweetest thing.
Yeah, they're really thinking about it, and it's something that's kind of come up fairly recently, actually. I'd say like in maybe the last sort of 4 or 6 weeks. Any member of staff, who they were, what they did. One of the things we do at the start of term is kind of like, as part of safeguarding, we publish like photos of like the safeguarding leads and stuff, and that goes in all the form rooms and things like that, and all the people who are first aiders and all the people who are mental health first aiders on site, but also all the MFAs, all their posters go up as well, all their pictures go up. So sort of familiarising themselves as much as possible. They all wear these little badges. So all the MFAs wear these badges.
Yeah, and it's becoming like this embedded language in the school, isn't it? Like that takes away that mental health stigma and makes it okay to ask for help earlier, which is the whole point. It's like we don't want students to have to need to go to the school nurse or the counsellor. We want them to become resilient and learn strategies to cope themselves, and then ask for help when they know that they don't have enough.
No, I think if you're debating it, do it. I do think it's had a real positive impact. That would be my sort of final thought with it, really. And I am genuinely excited to see what this new group of pupils sort of come up with and do, because they are so enthusiastic. It's infectious as to all the plans and what they want to do and take it forward. And I think they're going to be a really good bunch.